The senator from the great state of Texas, the one and only Ted Cruz. How are you, sir? Nice to finally meet you. How's everything?
Stephen, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Man, thank you for being here. First things first, the shutdown is over.
Yep.
Thank the good Lord.
Amen.
What took it so long?
Look, the Democrats, I think, wanted a shutdown. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at, we had 15 votes. 15 votes that Republicans voted to open the government, mm-hmm. and 15 votes that Democrats voted to keep it shut. And I think the reason for it at the end of the day was a political problem that Chuck Schumer had. Mm. So you go back to March. So look, the fundamental problem is to pass any funding for the government takes 60 votes in the Senate. That's the filibuster rule. That's the way the Senate's operated forever. There are only 53 Republicans. That means to open the government, to fund the government, you've got to get at least 7 Democrats. You actually have to get 8 because Rand Paul always votes no, so you got to get 8. Back in March, the last government funding expired, mm-hmm. and the Democrats worked with Republicans to keep the government open. And what happened is the left wing of the Democrat Party got furious. I mean, Schumer almost lost his job. Mm-hmm. And so I think this time Schumer felt the need. He had to show that he really, really, really hates Donald Trump. And so the Democrats voted no on funding, and we did it over and over and over again. Ultimately, after 43 days, 8 Democrats broke and voted with us to reopen the government. Mm. And it was, look, I think it's a political dynamic where there is a real battle in the Democrat Party. I don't know that Schumer survives, because even after he voted 15 times not to fund the government, even after he voted no the last time when the government opened up, mm-hmm. you still had a bunch of voices in the Democrat Party saying fire Chuck Schumer. And so I think it was basically just political anger mm-hmm. that shut the government down. But a lot of Americans were hurt by the consequences.
Isn't this just kicking the can down the road, though? Because it's only for the next couple of months to get through the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then after that, we're revisiting this all over again at the end of January, right? Yeah,
January 30th, we could do the whole thing all over again. And again, we got to get 60. So if the Democrats all vote no again, it'll shut down on January 30th.
You wouldn't have to if you got rid of the filibuster, which is what the president is proposing you guys do. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. The votes are not there on the Republican side.
Why not, though? Why aren't the votes there?
Because if you look at the last Congress, so when Joe Biden was in the White House and you had a Democrat Senate and a Democrat House, Schumer tried to end the filibuster. And he would have. Every Democrat but 2 voted to end the filibuster. The 2 who voted against it were Joe Manchin from West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona. Now, mm-hmm. by the way, both of them were chased out of the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. So they're not there anymore. If the Democrats had ended the filibuster and Kamala had won in November, I'll tell you what January of this year would have looked like. Schumer would have ended the filibuster, which means he could pass any legislation he wants with just 50 votes. The first bill he would have passed is a bill that's called S1, and it's the first bill Schumer introduces every Congress. And it is a federal takeover of election law nationwide. So it strikes down election integrity laws all over the country. It strikes down photo ID for voting over the country. It's designed, frankly, to make sure Democrats win elections across the country. The second thing they would have done is added 2 new states to the union. They would have added D.C. and they would have added Puerto Rico. And the reason they would do that is they believe that would elect 4 new Democrat senators. The third thing they would have done is they would have granted immediate voting rights to every illegal alien in the country and citizenship. If that had happened, let's take my home state of Texas. Mm. If illegal aliens voted, Texas would turn blue instantaneously. Mm. There are 29 statewide elected officials in Texas. All of them are Republican right now. Mm-hmm. The next election, all 29 would flip Democrat, and Texas would literally become California. We would end up with the same policies in Texas they have in California. And the fourth thing they would have done is pack the U.S. Supreme Court. Right now, there are 9 justices. They wanted to add 4 new left-wing justices, take it to 13. Look, my view, I'm an optimist by nature.
Are you?
I am deeply an optimist. I believe in America. I believe in brighter days ahead. Mm-hmm.
I was just joking about it because you don't sound optimistic when you talk about the Democrats. That's all I meant by that. I'm not talking about America. I'm just talking about Democrats.
As optimistic as I am in that scenario, I don't know how you turn that around. There's no way that's designed to lock in permanent Democrat power. And ultimately, the filibuster stopped that. And so I think a lot of Republicans say, look, that's the only thing that stopped us from going over a cliff. So most Republicans think if the Democrats take over, they'll end the filibuster. But from our end, we're not going to participate in the demise of the institution.
Well, what you just finished describing, educate, because you know more than the rest of us, but educate us about what role the whole redistricting issue in Texas played in terms of what you just articulated. Because obviously when everybody looked at the redistricting, they were thinking about more seats. That's what Donald Trump came out of his mouth and said there would be more Republican seats in the House and what have you. And so because they were looking at it from that standpoint, people were saying that essentially that the GOP was trying to do exactly what you just described the Democrats were trying to do. How do you argue against that?
So, look, there's no doubt that Texas redistricting was designed to increase Republican representation. If you look at Texas under the current map, there are 38 congressional seats in Texas. About 56% of Texans vote Republican right now in the last election, 2024. And about 65% of the congressional seats are Republican. So a little bit more than the percentage of the state, but 56 to 65 is pretty close. You know where California is right now?
Where?
83% of the congressional seats in California are Democrat. And one pattern you see across the country, Democrat states are overwhelmingly gerrymandered much more than Republicans are. So what Texas did is it went from 65% Republican to the new map they drew was 79% Republican. So it did increase. It would have added 5 new Republican seats. California responded by going from 83%.
What was it, 89 or 90?
92.
92.
And so it would, and you look at other states like Massachusetts, there are 9 congressional seats. You know how many are Democrat?
How many?
All of them. 100%. That's true of New Mexico. That's true of Maryland. They drew their maps. Actually, Maryland has 1 Republican, but they drew their maps. You look at Democrat states that are overwhelmingly skewed, like, Massachusetts, 35% of the voters vote Republican. They get 0 members of the House. Look, my view on it, there's a natural back and forth and give and take. And by the way, there can be a check on, gerrymandering. Sometimes you draw districts to try to win more seats. If your party has a bad election, you can end up losing those seats because you lessen your margins. But in Texas, the majority of the voters are Republicans. They support conservative policies. And I think it is in Texans' interest to have a Republican House of Representatives. And that's what the legislature did.
Some people will look at it and they'd say, okay, you're playing the same game you're accusing the Democrats of playing. And that's not good because 2 wrongs don't make a right, Senator Ted Cruz. What do you say to that?
I say both sides do it, and they've done it from the beginning of all time. And look, 20 plus years ago, I was the Solicitor General of Texas, which is the chief lawyer for the state in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Right. And one of the very first things I walked into in 2003 when I was appointed.
And you clerked under William Rehnquist.
I did, who was an incredible friend and boss and mentor. But I showed up as SG. I was 32 years old, and Texas 22 years ago did redistricting then. And so I find myself still then as a very young lawyer in the middle of litigation on redistricting. So I spent a lot of time and ended up helping try the case in court, and then it went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I argued it and won 5-4. And the central question there that the Democrats were challenging the redistricting is they said it was too political. It was done to elect more Republicans. And my defense, which the Supreme Court agreed with, is I said, look, the Constitution leaves redistricting questions to elected state legislatures. Politicians are going to be political. And that's not new. That was true from the very beginning of time, that they knew politicians would be, the word gerrymander comes from Elbridge Gerry, who was one of the founding fathers of our country. And Elbridge Gerry had a district that looked like a salamander. So gerrymander is his name, Jerry, plus salamander.
Okay.
And what the Supreme Court concluded is listen, politicians are going to be political on both sides. That's how the democratic process works. But it's better to have districting lines drawn by elected representatives where if the voters are ticked off, they can throw the bums out, than it is the other alternative is to have, say, unelected judges drawing lines, and the Supreme Court said that's not what the Constitution says.
Well, the courts just ruled, they just basically ruled against the state of Texas. And Governor Abbott said, you know what, we're going to appeal this immediately because they didn't vibe with what Texas tried to do in this particular situation. Were you surprised at all about that decision, or did you expect it?
I was a little bit surprised, I will say. I think the decision will be reversed. So the state of Texas is going to seek a stay of the U.S. Supreme Court. My prediction is the Supreme Court will stay the decision. We'll say this is not going into effect. The new map, you got congressional candidates who are out there campaigning. They filed. They're raising money. We're less than a year away from the election. So I think the Supreme Court will end up leaving the new map into effect. But I think we'll learn that soon. My guess is in the next couple of weeks.
I got a lot of stuff that I want to get into with you today. And by the way, before you leave today, we're going to get into I'm going to mention something about the NCAA with you. Because I know a lot of stuff that you're doing, and I'm not going to forget because I'm a sports guy. I can't wait to talk to you about that. But I got to ask you.
But by the way, you still play ball?
Oh, hell no. I mean, my knees won't allow it, Senator. My knees won't allow it. It's over. It's over. You just hit a wall one day and you just recognize, I'm just not what I used to be.
Look, I'll tell you, if you ever feel up to it, I play twice a week.
Really?
Yeah. Now, look, I was
Am I getting challenged to a game of basketball by a senator? Is that what's happening right now?
I'm just saying.
It's something I'll entertain if my knees stop acting up. Absolutely so.
We only play half court, though,
there we go.
It's a little bit easier on the knees.
I got you. I want to go from a macro perspective into this party, the state of affairs in this country. Zohran Mamdani is the mayor-elect of New York City. We know he's a renowned socialist, unapologetically so. We saw what happened, even though Spanberger in Virginia, Sherrill in New Jersey, they were more moderate than he was. We've seen this movement, and one of the things that you just alluded to was the progressive influence on the Democratic Party. As a member of the GOP party right now, how concerned are you about this? How concerned do you believe your party is about this, and why?
Look, I am worried about it. When I was first elected to the Senate, it was 13 years ago. And when I got there were moderate Democrats. There were people who you could work across the aisle, you could reach common ground. There are a lot fewer of them. I mentioned, Manchin and Sinema, who were the two most prominent moderates in the last Congress. They both got chased out of the Democrat Party. And I saw it happen when it really happened was when Trump was elected in 2016. And he basically, I think, broke the brains of the Democrats. They just hate him. And look, I understand Trump also enjoys sticking his thumb in their eye. I mean, he takes some, he revels in it, but it drives them crazy. And listen, I work very closely with President Trump. I understand people who could disagree with him, and you can have a reasonable debate on all sorts of topics. But the effect of Trump is basically the moderates were chased out of the Democrat Party. I think that's really unfortunate. I think the country would be better with two functioning parties that are not extreme. And I hope that changes over time.
What about those who would ask? You talk about the Democrats and how they just hate them. What about those who would ask, why do you like him? We saw how he treated you when you were competing against him in 2015 for the presidency. We saw how he talked about your family, talked about your wife, talked about your dad, he said a lot of things that most people wouldn't forgive. You, as hardcore as they come, fair-minded, no doubt, but hardcore as they come, the word forgiving nature, it's not the thing that gets associated with Ted Cruz. Is that fair to say? I mean, why do you seem so nice and finding yourself to like him a little bit?
Listen, there's no doubt in the 2016 cycle, he and I beat the living daylights out of him. And I beat the living daylights out of him, and he beat the living daylights out of me. And it was rough. And, politics, it ain't beanbag. And listen, I won 12 states. I came within inches of winning the nomination, but he beat me. And when he got elected in November 2016, I had a choice to make, and I thought about it, which is I could have had hurt feelings, and he said some rough things about me, although to be fair, I said some rough things about him too. Okay. But I got a job to do, and my job is to represent 31 million Texans. And so if I was going to get my feelings hurt and say I'm going to take my ball and go home, I could do that. But I better be prepared to resign from the Senate and say I can't do my job because I didn't think I could do my job. We had an opportunity, I thought, in 2016, and we have an opportunity now to do a lot of good. And so actually what I did, I got on a plane right after he got elected in 2016, and I flew to New York, and I spent 4.5 hours in Trump Tower. And I sat with him and I said, look, we've been given an historic opportunity. Republicans have been given the White House and both houses of Congress. That's rare. That doesn't happen very often. Mm-hmm. And I said, we can't blow this chance. And I told him then, I want to roll up my sleeves and get to work so we deliver on our promises. And I've been his strongest ally in the Senate since then, and I think we've gotten a lot accomplished. I'm proud of the record of what's gotten accomplished. And you've spent time with him.
I've known Trump. I haven't spent time with him at all since he came down those escalators.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but prior to that, that's why I don't vibe with all the people that just talk the malicious things that they say about him on a personal level. I think it would be hypocritical because all of us in the world of sports, we were associated with him. We used to go to his events all the time. We talked with him all the time. None of us ever had a problem with him. And I'm one of those people that refuses to all of a sudden, now that he's the president, even though I don't like some of the things he does, Senator, I don't like some of the things he does,
I get it.
I'm not going to turn around and act like I didn't have that relationship with him prior to that. I'm not going to do that.
Well, listen, he is one of a kind. They broke the mold with Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. There's never been anyone like him. I don't think there'll be anyone like him after that. Mm-hmm. What I appreciate about him is he's got courage. He's got guts in a way that there are not many people in politics that have. And that has led to, you look at some of the successes. Let's take, for example, the southern border. Obviously, I represent Texas. Yes. During the last 4 years under Biden, we saw 12 million people come into this country illegally. It was the worst illegal immigration we'd ever seen. That was a big, big factor in 2024. It was a big factor in Texas. Trump came in, and illegal border crossings have dropped more than 99%. I mean, that is a big deal, and that has resulted in improving the lives of a whole lot of people. And so I work with him because we're getting a lot of good stuff done. But he's also, he can be a lot of fun. He's got a great sense of humor. Part of the reason people watch his rallies is when he's standing up there, you don't know what he's going to say. He could say, there are times where he says things, you just shake your head and say, I can't believe those words.
Most of the time it comes across like he don't know what he was going to say. Well, if we're being honest. Yeah, look, I'm not comparing it to Biden, but sometimes he's rambling. I'm like, my God, get to your point.
He can have some riffs that are just, it's kind of free association, what pops in his head, mm-hmm. but he's an entertainer. Mm-hmm. And look, you're an entertainer. That's part of, if you want people to turn on the TV and listen to what you're saying, you don't want to be boring. You want to say mm-hmm. something interesting, and he... people watch in part because they don't know what he's going to say, and that makes it interesting.
But Ted Cruz, you're an Hispanic, okay? And you brought up the southern border. No doubt, I'm unapologetic. The borders needed to be closed.
Yeah.
Because Biden left. Now, had Biden imitated Obama, who deported more people than Trump, by the way, than Trump did in his first term, had you mimicked the policies of a president you once served under, if Biden had done that, that would be different. But to open the borders, to claim that, we have no border issue whatsoever, when it was clear as day that simply was false, it was not true. There's no doubt that I believe that Trump was absolutely right in saying the borders needed to be closed.
Right.
But I ask you this question. As an Hispanic, as a United States Senator, when you see the actions, the optics of ICE in the streets of America with Hispanics and others running away from them. When you see how many people say they're American citizens and they've been dragged out of their cars, they've been thrown to the ground, stuff like that, the visual, the optics, how does that make you feel? And how do you explain to Hispanics in this country, who are now the dominant minority in terms of numbers, how do you explain to them that that's okay?
Well, listen, I think Hispanics, you can want to see a secure border. You can want to see your community safe. I'll tell you, in 2024, in the election, Texas is a majority-minority state. We will, by the 2030s, we'll be majority Hispanic. And in this last elections, I won Hispanics in Texas by 6 points statewide, and Trump won Hispanics in Texas. And a big part of the reason, you go down to the Rio Grande Valley, which is South Texas, right along the border with Mexico. The valley has been blue, it's been Democrat for 100 years. This last election, the valley flipped red. I won the valley and Trump won the valley. And the reason is when your home is invaded by 12 million people, people in the Valley they see people being released. And you mentioned Obama. Look, I've joked, but it's true. I said Biden did something I used to think was impossible. He made me miss Barack Obama. Because, look, on immigration, Obama, by and large, followed the law. He deported millions of people. Remember, the left called him the deporter-in-chief.
Yeah, over 4 million.
Yeah. What Biden did, there's never been a president who's done this, which is he just defied the federal law, and when people were apprehended, they let them go. And in fact, apprehended wasn't even the right term. So I spent a lot of time on the border. I'd go out with Border Patrol on midnight patrol, and you'd see groups coming across. They would go look for the Border Patrol, and they'd turn themselves in because they knew Border Patrol would take custody of them, and they'd ask, where do you want to go? And they'd say, I want to go to New York, I want to go to Philadelphia, I want to go to Dallas. And the Biden administration would put them on a plane or put them on a bus and send them to every city in the country. And that, look, Hispanics in Texas saw the consequences of that. They saw the crime. They saw when 12 million people flood into the country, they saw the consequences. So if you look at who ICE is targeting violent criminals, they're targeting murderers, they're targeting rapists, child molesters, and gangbangers. And I got to say, in Texas, and I think in a lot of communities, I don't know a lot of communities that say, our families would be better off if we had more violent criminals here. And so I think enforcing the law is entirely consistent with also welcoming legal immigrants. My dad came as an immigrant from Cuba. Mm-hmm. And when my dad came to America, he had nothing. He was 18, he couldn't speak English, and his first job was washing dishes, making 50 cents an hour. But he came legally. That's the right way to come. And I think in Texas, at least, and in a lot of parts of the country, mm-hmm. Hispanic voters recognize that there's a right way to come, and they want their families safe and secure just like everyone else.
Oh, we got more to talk about. Senator Ted Cruz in the House, Straight Shooter with Stephen A. Smith right here over Sirius XM POTUS Radio Channel 124. A lot of stuff to get into, and I'm going to get to the NCAA. That's just personal for me, y'all. It's a sports question, but damn it, you'll understand why I got to ask this man right here next to me that very question about the NCAA. A lot more to come up with. Stephen A. Smith, Senator Ted Cruz in the House. Back with more in a minute. Top of the 7 o'clock hour, back here. Straight Shooter with Stephen A. Smith. The one and only Senator Ted Cruz out of the great state of Texas is right here in studio with me with this live audience. Sir, before I get back to politics, I'm a sports guy.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm able to pull it off at some point. You and on the left, Senator Cory Booker out of New Jersey have both put forth legislation to really address the situation with NCAA sports, the student athletes. Tell my audience what that's about right now with you.
Look, I think college sports is a mess right now. If you look at NIL and the transfer portal, and it's the Wild West. And I worry, I think Congress needs to act. And I think most members of the Senate agree with that. That if we don't act, I think we're going to see a lot of schools ending their athletic programs. I think we're going to see smaller schools ending their athletic programs. I think we're going to see track and field and Olympic sports eliminated at a lot of schools. I think we need to step in and protect the rights. Look, I think NIL is a good thing. I think athletes deserve to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They've developed great skills. So I think that's much more fair. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I want a system, as you know, college sports has been an avenue for millions of young men and women to get an education. The vast majority, 1% of college athletes are going to play pro ball. Most are not going to play in the NFL, not going to play in the NBA. But young men and women, many of whom would never get a chance at an education, get to go through an athletic scholarship. And so I think we need to act to preserve that opportunity. And to get it done, you and I started by talking about the shutdown. Yeah. The same filibuster rule works. The only way we're going to pass NIL legislation is if we get 60 votes. So I've been spending the last couple of years working real hard trying to get bipartisan agreement. We're not there yet. Mm-hmm. The person I'm working most closely with is Chris Coons from Delaware.
Yes, who I know well.
And Chris is a smart guy. He and I have been on the Judiciary Committee.
He's helped me immensely with HBCUs, absolutely.
Yep. Well, and the HBCUs feel a real urgency on this, that if we don't fix NIL, The HBCUs are worried they're going to lose their sports programs. And so my hope is we'll come together in a way that brings some sense of order and semblance and protects college sports.
Two things. Number one, count me in. Anything that you need from me.
Fantastic.
I'm happy to help in any way that I possibly can, and I am dying at some point in time to have you and Senator Cory Booker on together to talk about this lone issue involving the NCAA and student athletes, because you two together talking about the issues from both sides of the aisle, I think it's important for a national audience to hear. So thank you so much for that.
Well, you know, it might surprise you, but Booker and I are friends. We get along quite well. We've gone out to dinner. People freak out in D.C. They see Cory Booker and me sitting at a dinner table, and they're like, what, this is a sign of Armageddon. But Cory he's a smart guy. We don't agree on a lot of policy issues, but he's a smart guy. He's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. He's been on the show.
Although I will tell you, I'm going to talk a little bit of smack on Cory. I mentioned I play hoops.
Yes.
So
he had football.
So a bunch of senators have played with me, but two senators, Booker and Marco Rubio, both gave me the same lame-ass excuse.
They ran from you?
They both said, Ted, if you're over 40 and you're playing hoops, you're going to tear your Achilles. And I said, look, you can either be dead or you can act like you're dead. And both of them were college football players. I mean, Booker was a serious college football player.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to get either one of them, so I keep talking smack trying to get one of them to...
Well, I mean, it's not the biggest thing, Senator, to brag about how you challenged Marco Rubio to a basketball game. I mean, I love the guy. I think that he's a threat to be the next president of the United States. He's got a chance as Secretary of State, National Security. Right? I mean, we know what Marco Rubio brings to the table and what he was as a senator. But I mean, he's about 5'5", 5'6". I mean, something like that.
He's actually probably 5'9", but he was a running back. I mean,
that's
he did
true.
play college football.
We say basketball, not football.
I understand.
Okay, I'm just saying.
All right, I want to ask you as a sports guy,
Yes,
what do you think are the chances my Rockets win it all? Because I'm bullish on them.
I think they got a chance. I think Oklahoma City is the best team in basketball right now. You'd have to go through them. They've got size, they've got athleticism, they've got shooting, they've got perimeter shooting. They're an elite defensive team, and they have the best player, one of the best players in the world in SGA. He's absolutely fantastic. But you guys are exceptionally well coached by Ime Udoka. Kevin Durant is a superstar and the number one option, and you can start 4 dudes, 6'11" and above, which is what it may take to beat Oklahoma City.
Did you watch the last game against Orlando?
I didn't see the last game.
Okay, so it was a game we trailed the whole game. We were not playing all that well, and then we fought back. And look, we got a bunch of young talent, but we needed a closer. We needed someone in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter you can give the ball to and go score.
KD.
And KD is one of the greatest to ever live.
He's that dude.
And you look at it, went to overtime, and we won the game, and we literally were losing the whole game. It made me feel very happy because that's the piece we were missing.
That's
lots of talent, but someone who can
Last point about this before I get to politics.
Yeah.
I feel much more bullish about y'all had Fred VanVleet not got injured.
I know. God, that's
him
painful.
getting injured is what did you in my opinion. But
I mean,
you still
we
got
got
a chance.
Şengün
You still got a chance.
playing point guard
You still got a chance.
Weird.
You still got a chance.
Yeah.
Let me get back to politics here.
Yeah.
You running for president?
At this
You're
point,
in the
I'm
news.
doing my job. Look,
President Trump said that he supports you.
Well, I'm not sure he said that, but he did say we're good friends and we work together very closely.
Yes.
And
says a long way to go.
Listen, what I'm doing right now is doing my job, which is fighting for 31 million Texans. And we're winning some historic victories. So I'll give you an example. We just passed the big reconciliation bill on July 4th. I wrote a lot of that bill. And there are a lot of pieces there that are really important. Let me mention two that I think are the two most important parts of the bill, and I wrote both of them. Okay. One is school choice. And we passed the largest federal school choice provision that has ever passed. It's going to help. It's going to unlock billions of dollars of scholarships for millions of kids to attend a school of their choice, and it's going to transform their futures. That's now in the law. And secondly is what are called the Trump accounts, and I wrote this too. We're starting next July 4th. Every child in America is going to have a personal investment account open for them. Every newborn child will have it seeded with $1,000. Parents and family and employers can put $5,000 a year in a tax advantage account. All of that is invested in the S&P 500, which means every child in America is going to get to experience the benefit of compound growth. And we're going to create a whole new generation of capitalists because our kids are going to be owners of the biggest employers in America. Both of those are in the bill that we passed on July 4th. I wrote them both, and those kind of victories are historic. I think, Stephen, 10, 20, 30 years from now, we'll look back and say that changed America in a way that was powerful.
What about the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
People mention you about that because they think listen, you've been called next level brilliant. People view you as somebody that's more than qualified to sit on the highest court in the land. Your name has been broached in that regard. If not the presidency, what about that? So, look,
I respect the Supreme Court immensely, and it's humbling to be discussed in that context. That is not the path I want to go. And the first term, Trump had 3 vacancies. He talked to me about all 3. And I told him flat out, no, I don't want the job. And people are surprised. A lot of people say, well, gosh, because much of my career has been arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court. That's what I did for a living before I was in the Senate. The reason I don't want to be a judge is a principled federal judge stays out of political fights and stays out of policy fights. And if I were a judge, that's what I'd do. Mm-hmm. I don't want to stay out of political fights and policy fights. I want to get right in the middle of fighting for school choice. I want to get right in the middle of trying to fix college athletics. I want to get right in the middle of securing the border. And the right place to do those fights is in the elected offices. And so that's where I am right now. And I jump out of bed every day. My dad was an immigrant with nothing, and now his son gets to represent the state of Texas in the Senate. What an incredible privilege. And so I respect and even revere the Supreme Court, but I have told President Trump unequivocally I don't want it. I would not accept it. But I'm proud of having worked with him to confirm some really good justices.
We're running out of time. I could have pushed back a little bit more with ICE in terms of who. It's one thing, I have no doubt that they're targeting those folks, but also Tom Homan, who I respect and I've interviewed on this show on several occasions. He's very dogged in his approach towards, protecting, closing the borders and making sure that folks don't cross the border illegally. When we talk about criminals and stuff like that, there are times he comes across as not drawing a distinction between actual criminals and those who just cross the border illegally because it's illegal to cross the border. That's his mentality, and that's raised some flags. Although I can bring that up, I'm not going to. That'll be for another time. Here's what I wanted to bring up to you because I'm very uncomfortable. This is not about you. I'm very uncomfortable with things that I've seen from Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Some of the verbiage. A recent interview with Nick Fuentes.
Yeah.
Some of the things that have been said, and we don't have time to get into the specifics per se, but it was very uncomfortable to listen to some of the stuff they've said about race, some of the stuff that was articulated about the Jewish community or whatever. And you made news because of an interview you had with Tucker Carlson months ago, whenever that was. I want to know, what are your feelings about the state of this country, the climate, particularly when you see the kind of rhetoric that he's been tackling?
Listen, Stephen, you and I are on exactly the same page on this. And look, I look at the question of anti-Semitism. I think 10 years ago in the Democrat Party, you started to see an anti-Semitism rise. And a lot of the Democrat leaders looked the other way. They hoped it would go away. And I think it's all but taken over their party. And Mondami's a good example of just how extreme that can get. It's also happening on the Republican side. And in the last 6 months, I've seen more anti-Semitism on the right than any time in my life. And it is wrong. And from my perspective, I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. I think Tucker is dangerous. I think what he's saying is wrong. And I'm calling him out. And I'm calling him out over and over and over again. When you have goose-stepping Nazis on your program, when you have a professor who says, gosh, I think Winston Churchill is the villain of World War II. When you have another professor who says there's a good argument America should have supported the Nazis in World War II. No, there's not, and that's garbage. And Tucker's gone down a very dark path. And I don't want to wake up in 5 years and see the Republican Party have gone down the path of the Democrats. If we have a country where both parties are viciously anti-Israel and welcoming and even celebrating of anti-Semitism, that is an ugly place. And one of the things, when you go down the road of anti-Semitism, it very quickly leads you to anti-capitalism and anti-Americanism. And Mondami's a good example of that, where he's an Islamist, but he's also a socialist. And you look at Tucker. Tucker's going down that road, too, in a way that I think is very dangerous. So at least on my end, and I'm encouraging other Republicans, stand up and reject this. If you are a bigot, if you are a Klansman, if you are a Nazi, you got no business in the Republican Party, and we don't want you. And I don't think you should be welcomed in either party, because I think our country was built on equal rights for everybody.
You brought up Mamdani.
Yeah.
And you threw his name into the equation. I mentioned Tucker Carlson. You just said what you said. And you said you were very, very concerned about the GOP and the Republicans as it pertains to the direction that they're going in. Who are you more concerned about as it pertains to that issue, the Democrats or the Republicans?
Look, both. I think the Democrats are much more far gone. Like I said, I think, and many of my colleagues in the Senate, they don't like what's happened to their party, particularly on these issues, but they're scared. They're scared of the radical left. You looked at Kathy Hochul and Hakeem Jeffries, who rushed to Manhattan to endorse Mamdani. It's because they're scared of the extreme left. Look, Chuck Schumer and the shutdown, that was the same. AOC and Mamdani is where all the energy is on the Democrat side, and they're scared of it. The Republican Party, we're not there yet, but I don't ever want to see us get there. And so I don't want to make the mistake that the Democrats did. I want to say, and listen, I don't think I'm going to persuade Tucker. I've known Tucker for 25 years. He's a smart guy. But I'm not going to persuade him. I'm not going to persuade Nick Fuentes either. But I am worried about young people. I am worried about teenagers and 20-somethings who listen to this poison that's being spread. And look, we're so divided. We're so polarized. Something you said earlier I agree with. We need to ratchet down the rhetoric. We need to stop attacking each other personally. And we're so polarized that I think particularly young people, they take a permission structure where they say, oh, this is what our team believes. Oh, okay, we hate Israel. Okay, we hate Jews. And anytime you see, look, we saw tragically when Charlie Kirk was murdered. And Charlie was a good friend of mine. I knew Charlie. I met Charlie when he was 18 years old and fresh out of high school. There were some loons online who said Israel killed Charlie Kirk. Now, that's nutty. But that kind of conspiracy theory is a really dangerous path to go down. And at least from my end, I'm going to do everything I can to stop the Republican Party from going that direction.
I know you have to go. I just want to say thank you, because I've been trying to get you for a little while, and I finally got you, and you were kind enough to come in the studio. You're always welcome back on the show anytime, and I'm looking forward to having a lengthier conversation with you, and I'm definitely looking forward to having that conversation with you and Cory Booker.
Excellent.
Strictly about the whole NCAA. Thank you so much for taking time out of
Appreciate it, Stephen. Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. The one and only Senator Ted Cruz, right here with Stephen A. Straight Shooter with Stephen A. Back with your calls and more in a minute.